Hello YouTube, Raul here. In today's video we're gonna look at Redux Saga, a library that is meant to make application side effects easier to manage when using Redux. It acts as a middleware, so it will help us run asynchronous code within our React Redux application. Before we get started, I want to mention that this is gonna be a three-part video series. So today we're gonna look at the basics of Redux Saga. In the next video, we're gonna look at the more advanced concepts. And then in the third one, we are going to create a bigger project in which we are going to use Redux Saga along with React and Redux. Okay. The next thing, I want to show you the resources that we're going to use in this project. So the first one is called JSON placeholder, which creates a free fake REST API to which we can make asynchronous calls. We can make GET requests to get some data. We can make POST requests to pretend like we are posting data to a server, even if we are actually not. And then after this, I have a GitHub repository I created, which has a branch called Starter Basic Tutorial. So if you want to follow along, go ahead and clone this repository because I have added some initial setup for the project and some configurations. And it will be easier if you don't have to write all of that by hand. I'm going to also show you what I have added inside of the files if you want to write them by hand. So let me show you. First, I have an index.js. Here I just added the provider and I linked to the Redux store. Then in app.js, I imported a posts component which comes from this modules folder. We're going to look at that in a moment. Now going to the store folder, I have an index in which I imported some stuff from Redux. I got a root reducer, which I created in the same folder. Then we have the Redux dev tools. And later I created the store using create store and I added the dev tools and I exported it default. The root reducer just imports combine reducers from Redux, then imports the posts reducer from the modules folder. I have a modules folder because we are going to use this project for the advanced concepts too. So we're going to need multiple modules. And here at the end of this reducer file, I just export default combine reducers with our posts reducer. Okay, now going to the posts module, the post reducer just has three pieces of state in it: a loading state, a posts array in which we're going to put the posts, and an error which is for the moment null. Okay, now the last two files are a posts actions, in which I created two sets of three action constants. One is called get posts, and it's the first constant is gonna be the initial dispatch. Then if our request succeeds, we are going to dispatch the success action. If not, we're gonna dispatch the failed action. Same for the add post actions. And then I created some action creator functions which just get the payload and added to our get post function with the type of that specific action. So these are all I created. Then in the post.js, I have imported React and use state and imported use dispatch from React Redux. I initialized the use dispatch, also two pieces of state for a title and a description. We're going to use it to dispatch an action to add a post. Then I have a button that will dispatch the actions to get the post from the JSON placeholder. Then two inputs for the title and description, and then a button to add the item. So these are all included in the GitHub repository along with a utils folder, which has two methods that will get our data from the JSON placeholder. So this is the first one, get posts, which will get our data from the fake API and return an array of objects. And the add post uses the fetch API to post the data that it receives to the same URL. So this is it for our configurations. If you didn't, go ahead and get the repo and come back to this video. To use Redux Saga, first we are going to have to install it. If you didn't, and if you got the repo and didn't run npm install, just type npm install into your terminal and wait for that command to run so you get your node modules. If you did before, then you will have to install Redux Saga. So let's run npm install redux-saga. Now, after the library was installed, let's run npm start and wait for our development server to run. I am going to close all of these. And here we have our app. So what I told you about the posts component, it has a get post button, two inputs, and an add item button. So let's get started with Redux Saga. The first part that we're gonna look at is how we can add the middleware, the Redux Saga middleware, to our store. So let's go into index.js in the store folder. We are going to import the default export from Redux Saga, and we're gonna call it create Saga middleware from Redux Saga. Then let's create the Saga middleware. So constant Saga middleware is gonna be a call to create Saga middleware. And now we have to add our middleware to the Redux store. So from Redux, we are going to import apply middleware. And inside of our with DevTools function, we are going to call apply middleware. And inside of this, we are going to put the Saga middleware. Okay, so this is it for adding the Saga middleware. Now, how do we actually use it? For that, for our first Saga, let's create a saga.js file in the store folder. And here we are going to export a generator function, so a function with a star at the end, which is a newer type of function from ES6. And inside of this function, we are just going to console log for the moment. I am Redux Saga. Let's just say it like that. It's gonna be the default export. And now let's go into index.js, import the root Saga, let's call it like that, from our saga.js. And after the store was created, we are going to run Saga middleware. We are going to call a function from Saga middleware, which is called run. And inside of this function, we are going to put our root Saga. I call it root Saga because you're gonna see we're not gonna actually import other sagas into this store folder. We are going to import them into the root Saga and combine them there, so we don't have to have saga middleware.run for, let's say, 20 different sagas. But let's continue with our introduction. So we have this console log added into our Saga middleware. So let's open the DevTools. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. And now I'm going to refresh the page. And you can see when the page was loaded, we get the I am Redux Saga console log, because this just runs whenever the store is initialized. Now, after this, we are going to look at some features from Redux Saga. So let's create a posts.saga.js file in our modules posts folder. In this post.saga.js, we are going to import something from Redux Saga / effects, so not from Redux Saga like we did before. And that something for the moment is gonna be take every. And now we are going to create another generator function, and we're gonna call this get posts watcher. So what a watcher function in Redux Saga is a function that will wait for a certain action to be dispatched and will call another function for that. That's how we are going to use it. So we are going to use the yield keyword that's gonna pause our generator function at this statement right here. Then we are going to call take every, and in this take every we have to give it two different parameters. So one of them is going to be the action that we want to await. So let's import from /posts actions. We are going to get the get posts action. So we are going to wait for this get posts action, and when this runs, we are going to call a function called get posts saga. We haven't created this, but we are going to get that in a moment. So this yield take every will call our get posts saga every time get posts is dispatched. Next, we have to make sure that this get post watcher, actually let's call it get posts watcher, reaches our root saga so that it gets run, so that it will wait for these actions. For that, we are going to import something else from Redux Saga effects, which is called all. This will run our sagas in parallel. So we are going to export default, another generator function. Let's also give it a suggestive name called post saga. And inside of this post saga, we are going to yield just once all. And inside of this, we are going to give it an array of all our saga functions or all our generator functions that we want to run. So we're gonna put get post watcher, and we're actually gonna call it here because generator functions pause at the yield. So it will pause at yield, and it will only continue when a get posts action is dispatched. We'll see that in a moment. Now let's go back into our saga.js from the store folder. Here, let's comment out this first function that we created. We are going to again import all from Redux Saga effects, and then we are going to also import our posts saga from our modules folder, posts, and posts.saga. Then we are going to do again as we did in our post saga. So we're gonna export default a function. In this, we're gonna yield all again, and we're gonna give it our post saga. So it may seem a little bit complicated for the moment. We actually have an error here. Oh, I have a bracket and another one here. And now our error is that get post saga is not defined, which is fine because we didn't define that yet. It may seem a little bit complicated that I'm doing all of these exports with yield all, but this is just so you learn good Redux Saga patterns from the beginning. This is the normal way you will use Redux Saga in your bigger apps. So let's go back and fix that get posts saga error. Let's create that generator function again, which is gonna be called get posts saga. And inside of this, we will have to make our asynchronous calls and then handle the dispatching of another action if they succeed or if they throw an error. Now, in Redux Saga, you don't just call a function, so we can't just import something from our utils folder in the API. Here we have a get post. We can just import it and then call it like this here. We can, but that will make our generator functions really hard to test because we can't know the outcome of this. So Redux Saga gives us some utilities to call functions and also to dispatch actions. So from Redux Saga effects, we are going to input call and put. So to dispatch an action, we are going to use put, and to call some functions, we are going to use call. So let's use them. So let's create a constant called data. Then we are going to yield again, then call that function, and inside of this call function, we are going to pass a reference to our API functions. I put the result of this in a constant because our API returns the data that our API function returns the data that it receives from JSON placeholder. Okay, now let's just console log that and see if it works. So we are awaiting this get posts action. So let's go into post.js and dispatch that action. So we are going to import get posts as a function from post actions. So this is an action creator function that will dispatch an action called with the type of get post. And now inside this onClick handler for the get posts button, let's dispatch and get posts. One thing before we press the get post button, in saga.js in our store folder, this call to post saga should be inside of an array. Now if we save, refresh our app, I have the Redux DevTools here, and we press the get post, we see our get posts action is dispatched. And if we go into our console, we see a result. This is what our JSON placeholder gives us back. Let me refresh and show you with only the console. So refresh, I press the get posts, and we get the data from the API. Good. Now let's handle that data. So we just console logged it here, but we want this data to be stored inside of our reducer. So here we are going to yield again, and this time we're gonna get the put method, and we are going to dispatch another action. So this time we get the get posts success from, not from our API, but from our post.actions. We get the get posts action creator, and we are going to put this get posts success action. We are gonna call it this time, and we're gonna pass it the data that we received. So now let's press the get posts button again, but this time let's look at our Redux DevTools. I'm gonna refresh. When I press the get posts button, you can see I get the get posts success action dispatched. If we click on it and go to the action tab, here in the payload you will see all of those items that we received from the API. Great. Now let's go into the reducer for posts and handle these actions really quick. So we're gonna create a case here. We are going to get post. So if the get post action is dispatched, we want to set is load. We want to return an object in which we spread the state, then set is loading to true in case we get the get post success action dispatch. In this case, we are going to return, then copy the state, set is loading to false again, and then inside of our posts array, we are going to put the payload. I destructured the type and the payload here at the top, so I don't have to write action time and time again. Okay, now if I refresh, I press the get posts. When the get posts action is succeeded, we can check our state. We have the posts array right here. Okay, but what if our API call fails? So we have no way of catching the errors right now. So for this, I'm gonna cut this code I wrote right here, and we are going to create a try catch block. So inside of this try catch block, we are going to, in the try part, we are going to put our code for before. So if everything succeeds, the catch won't be reached. But if the API call to get posts right here throws an error, then we are going to put another action, which is gonna be get posts failed. My IDE auto imported it from the same actions file. And for this, we are going to give it the action.message. Now, if I refresh, now if we go into our API file, here in the fetch request, let's just mess something up with the link and save it. Now I'm gonna refresh the page and dispatch the action, and you can see our action failed. In the console we don't have anything because we caught our error, and here in the Redux DevTools we get a get post failed action. If we look at the action, it got the payload is unexpected token at position 0 because the URL was wrong. If I delete that save, refresh, and then dispatch, we get post success. So now everything works. Let me also show you how you can make a post request really quick. Nothing really changes. The only difference is gonna be this call function right here. That's what we are going to change. So let's go into posts.js first. Here we are going to get the add post action from the post action, and inside the on-click handler for the add item button, we are going to dispatch again the add post, and let's add an object with the title and description. So these two states that we have right here. I'm gonna save that. Now if we type something into the inputs, press add item, we see the add post action with the payload that we added. Now let's go back to our Saga, and we're gonna create a new watcher function. So this time we're gonna call it add post watcher. Again, we are going to yield. This time we don't want to yield take every, because if our user types something into the inputs and presses the add button like 10 times, let's say, we don't want our item to be added 10 times or the call to the API to be made 10 times. So that's why we're going to import another effect called take leading, which is only gonna take the first of the dispatched actions. Any actions that follow after that while our item or our asynchronous function is still going on, it will just be cancelled. If we use, you can see here, take latest, that's only gonna take the latest call, and it will cancel the previous calls that were started before the latest one. But for this we're going to use take leading. We're going to call take leading. This time we are going to get the add posts action, and let's call the add post saga. Let's also create it so it doesn't throw an error. So function get add post saga, and inside of this add post saga we are going to get the action. So as a parameter you can get the dispatched action that you catch with this watcher, and then we are going to do again a try catch block. In the try, we are going to again do the same thing. So we're gonna get the data as yield call, and this time we are gonna call add post from our utils API, which is the same pretty much as get post, but instead is a post request that adds the body, the data that we send to it. So it uses JSON stringify to add the data, and at the end we will receive an ID. So this JSON placeholder API will give us just an ID that for our new item. Okay, so we are going to call here add post, but this time we need to pass some data to it because the add post in the API, the get post didn't need any payload, but this add post needs some data. So we are going to add as a second parameter, we are going to add action, and we want the payload from our action. So the first parameter has to be the function that you want to call, and then all the next parameters are gonna be passed as arguments to that function. Okay, now if the call succeeds, we are going to yield put, and this time we are going to get the add post failed and add post success action creators from post.action. And here we are going to add post success. And what we're gonna do here, because usually your API gives you back your whole item that you created, but this JSON placeholder only gives us the ID. So we're gonna create our object by hand. So we are going to dispatch add post success with an object in which we are going to spread the action.payload, and then we are going to spread the data that we receive. So this is going to be an object which is going to have an ID key. And in case of an error, we are going to again yield put add post failed, to which we are going to give error.message. Okay, so this should be it. Let's try and see if that works. So I'm gonna refresh, type something, and then press add item. And it didn't work because I didn't register the add post watcher here in our export default in the yield all. So let's put the add post watcher here and call it. Now let's try that again. And you can see our success action was dispatched. And if we look at the payload, we get the title and description that we added, which come from this action.payload. And then we get an ID of 101 because by default the JSON placeholder API for posts has 100 items inside of it. Okay, so now you're pretty much set to use Redux Saga, or at least the basic parts of Redux Saga inside of your application. In the next video, we're going to look at some more advanced concepts from Redux Saga. And after that, we are going to build a bigger project in which we are going to use both basic and advanced features from Redux Saga to handle all of our asynchronous side effects. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know in the comments below what videos you would like to watch aside from the continuation to the Redux Saga series. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video so I know to make more content. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.